we'll review a complete cycle of flying operations, starting with the aircraft being ranged on deck. Here's one going up now. The aircraft are ranged some time before they are due to fly off, as it's necessary to get them properly stowed on deck. Method of ranging depends on the number of aircraft in the range, the amount of wind speed available, and the amount of deck space to be used. Aircraft are always handled with folded wings, which are spread when each plane is in position if space permits. Seconds. Before dealing with a normal takeoff, let's look at the... Now we'll get back to the squadron, which is fully ranged aft. The rear gunners, observers and pilots get into their places in the aircraft and are helped into their harness by the mechanic. This, by the way, is the correct order for getting aboard. First the gunner, then the observer, and lastly the pilot. Now they're all set to go. The engines are running, the petty officer in charge of the flight reports to the deck control officer, who gives the signal to commander flying. He is installed on his own bridge on the island, in close contact with the captain on the compass platform. From his lofty position, the commander flying has a view of the entire flight and can see everything that's going on.
Required for 4-5 firing with close up other range at 16 fast.
On receipt of the deck control officer's signal, orders are given for the ship to be turned into the wind. Meanwhile, the deck control officer brings the first aircraft into position for takeoff by working red and blue flags. Pilots must watch the signals closely, and so must the men handling the chocks. As soon as the stop signal is given, the chocks must be placed in position to prevent the aircraft moving back. When the steam jet shows that the ship is into the wind, commander flying shows a green flag from his bridge. This is the executive signal for flying off, and the deck control officer proceeds with the operation. Chocks away is the first signal, and the aircraft must now be held on the brakes until the green flag is dropped, which signal is given for each individual aircraft. This green flag is only used for the takeoff. As soon as one aircraft is clear of the takeoff position, another is brought up into its place and the operation proceeds automatically. Pilots must be on the alert and respond immediately to all signals from the control officer and his assistants. In this way, and with good drill and cooperation, aircraft can take off at intervals of 10 to 12 seconds. As the aircraft take off, they either proceed independently or to a prearranged squadron forming up position, which is generally on the bow of the carrier. When the commander flying changes his flag or panel from green to red, all flying off operations must stop. Now that they're off, we'll have a closer look at the gear that will be ready to help them to land when they return. On returning, aircraft always go to the waiting position, usually 1 mile on the quarter or astern of the carrier. As soon as the carrier is ready, the squadron distinguishing flag is shown at number 1 boom port. One sub-flight of the squadron then closes the ship. Each pilot prepares for landing by lowering his hook. Individual aircraft then circle round the carrier in readiness to land. When the commander flying is satisfied that conditions are suitable for landing, the affirmative flag is displayed at number 2 boom port. This is also repeated by the mechanical shutter. It is the permissive signal for aircraft to approach the deck only, and the executive signal for the deck landing control officer to commence landing on aircraft. From now onwards, each pilot is under the orders of the control officer. All his signals must be obeyed. By making these unmistakable signals, the control officer can bring the pilot to the right height and speed over the after end of the deck, and it is obvious that a pilot who places himself completely in the hands of the deck officer can be sure of making a safe landing. Specially detailed ratings run out and disengage the hook. The aircraft taxis forward, and the barriers are raised in readiness for the next arrival. A little to your right, a little higher. Cut your engine. The pilot closes his throttle, and if the plane is being flown in the right attitude, it will make a good landing. It is essential that all these signals should be obeyed promptly. To make things easy for the hard-working control officer, it is most desirable that aircraft should make a straight approach, stepped up at the correct angle. Let's have a look at that in slow motion. Note the angle, plenty of engine, nose well up. Aircraft hanging on its propeller and sinking steadily towards the deck. The rate of sinking is controlled by the amount of throttle used. We'll keep this slow motion going so that you can see clearly how the hook functions. It catches the wire, the hydraulic resistance comes into play, and the aircraft is smoothly arrested. So far, we've only seen comparatively slow-moving aircraft landing, but with care and obedience to the batsman's signal, other aircraft ready to land very shortly afterwards. A high rate of landing aircraft is very necessary for the efficient operation of the ship, and this can only be achieved if aircraft space themselves and back up so that the next one is about to touch down as soon as the barriers go up. After landing, as soon as the aircraft has been freed from the wire, a rating standing on the port side where the pilot can see him signals by means of arm movements and directs him forward of the barriers. You will realize from what you have seen that controlled landings are of the utmost importance both to experienced and inexperienced pilots. This control makes it possible for pilots with little carrier experience to be sent on operational flights confident in the knowledge that they will land safely. Even an experienced pilot can appreciate putting himself in the hands of the control officer when he returns from a long operational flight, especially at night. By the way, controlled landings work on the same principle at night. Each aircraft has 3 small lights to show its position and attitude, and the control officer, who never sleeps of course, uses illuminated bats. Whether it's night or day, put your trust in the control officer. He'll let you down lightly. Now, here's a landing which shows all the faults which should be avoided. The aircraft is brought in too fast, too high, and drifting. The pilot ignores the control officer's signals, and the resulting catastrophe is just what might have been expected. Very poor display and not one to be emulated. Let's send him back to make another approach. That's better. Now, having landed to everybody's satisfaction, let's see what goes on forward of the barrier. We've got a lot of aircraft on hand, and they have to be tucked away with neatness and dispatch, and there's a lot of action going on here. As soon as the aircraft is clear of the barrier, its wings are folded. Each squadron has a special party told off for this job, and they pounce on the aircraft directly it comes to rest. As soon as it's folded, it waits its turn abaft the lift or parked on one side. There's always an officer or senior rating who decides on the destination of each aircraft. The lift cycle for striking down is about 2 minutes per aircraft, and as they are landing on about every half minute, a large number will accumulate in the park. Stowage, therefore, calls for a lot of thought.